Okay. So my name is Elisha Halpin, and we're going to go through some forgiveness process today. And what I want to bring forward before we begin a little bit of practice and process together is um, I want you to start with sort of like what your concept of forgiveness is. Just kind of give yourself your definition. What does forgiveness mean to you? Maybe you have a concept or a definition you work with. Maybe it's something that you feel that you struggle with. Maybe it's something that you feel you're amazing at. So wherever you are might be wherever you might be on your journey or your thoughts, just kind of land yourself first in like, this is what I believe, this is where I am. Just inviting yourself into that place and into that recognition, just as a place of beginning. And then as you're doing that, just go ahead and invite yourself to maybe wiggle in your seat, or take some deep breaths. And you're welcome to share with me in the comments what your definition or concept of forgiveness is. And I'm going to take maybe a slightly different approach to what we think about forgiveness. Maybe not for you. Maybe this will be right on the way that you think of it too. I think no matter how you think of it, this is a concept that can partner with any belief system that we have, with any concept of forgiveness that we may be working with. And what I want to think about forgiveness, or what I'm inviting us to think about forgiveness, is it's a place where we got stuck or caught or frozen, to look at it from an embodiment perspective. So that when we coalesce around an event and the energetics and the emotions are judgment or constriction or shame, guilt, blame, when we feel like that we're gonna work forgiveness from this place of self-forgiveness today. So I'm not gonna kind of talk about the concept in that aspect of another, but just from the self. And so when we feel like we've done it wrong, we've been wrong, we should have fill in the blank. This place where we kind of get into our own sticky flypaper or spider's web, and we get caught, and part of us gets stuck there. Now the other parts of us have to continue on with life, and we have to continue on, and so we're kind of dragging these stuck parts. And some of us might feel that like we've got a lot of spider webs kind of hanging out behind us. We kind of get stuck back into them, these places of judgment. And so what's happening from an embodied perspective is that because our awareness of self, our story of self, is hooked in, frozen into a pattern, what that means is that we can only go as far as that. We can think about it as a rubber band or a leash, as far away from that spider's web until it jerks us back. So we will find that these places of unforgiveness towards ourselves, we might language them different sometimes. They might happen in different scenarios in our life, but we're kind of getting caught back into the same energetics. We're getting caught back into that same place in our nervous system that's a little jinky, a little stuck. And so thinking about forgiveness as a process of thawing or unfreezing, coming back into aliveness. Forgiveness is where we are not in present aliveness. Through the body, through the expansiveness of our consciousness, through our perception, our seeing and engagement with life. We're not in the aliveness of it because it's frozen in an old story. It's stuck in a pattern. And so as we thaw, we have the opportunity to disrupt that pattern. We can actually shift those energetics so that we're not in this ricochet or this cycle, right? This spiral, ongoing, cyclical nature of judging ourselves. Okay. So, what I'm going to invite you to do is to think about, maybe you could think about today or yesterday or maybe even the past week. So, try not to go maybe too far into the past. Try for something that's a little bit more immediate. And I want you to look for a judgment you've had against yourself. Now, a lot of our judgments show up in our shoulda, woulda, coulda stories. Sometimes they show up in, the places where we feel that we're not enough, are too much, are too little stories can also be places where we have judgments. So I just want you to come up with what's the judgment that you have most recently enacted upon yourself. And you're welcome to put that in the comments as well. And try not to tell the story of what happened. Try just to land in the words of the judgment. So don't tell yourself the story of like, well, because the dog did this and then da 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 da, I said, like, what did you say to yourself? What's the words that you're using as your judgment? I had this moment many years ago at this point, but it was one of those moments that I'm so grateful for. I, at the time, was raising my nephew. He was very little, so he was probably around 3 years old at the time. And I was in the basement, and I believe I was doing laundry or something, but I knocked something over. I knocked something over. And I heard myself say, "You're so stupid." Right? So that scenario of where I was or what I was doing, that's the story part. So I want to get rid of that and I want to stay with, "You're so stupid." That's the judgment. That's the judgment I was holding against myself. I was calling myself stupid. And the moment that I heard that and I got curious, why would I call myself stupid? And I began to stalk my thoughts and really pay attention. I had to come to the uncomfortable place of admitting that I was very judgmental against myself. And I had to come to the uncomfortable acceptance that a lot of my quote unquote motivation, the ways that I was helping to get myself out of my comfort zone, excuse me, the ways that I was attempting to motivate myself, all of these were coming from a place of judgment. They were all coming from this place of believing that I was lacking something, that I was not doing enough, that I was not good enough. I was never going to be good enough. It was never going to be enough. It's this deep place of scarcity that I was judging myself from. And so, firstly, I made a commitment to myself. You may not use the word stupid. I rarely even use it to this day. This is like a decade later. I rarely use it to this day in casual conversation. It's just not a word that I have very active in my vocabulary, but it is an absolute no-go as a name calling, that I cannot call myself stupid. And that's very important because I have to have a willingness to begin to change my language. So whatever the language is around that judgment that you're meeting, it probably wasn't just about forgetting to take out the trash yesterday or forgetting to call that person back or not saying the right thing or whatever that event is. It's not about the event. It's about the energy you're holding against yourself or within yourself. That is an against energy. That's the first place we want to start, making a commitment to shift that language. So if you're watching, or if you want to put this in your journal, what is the language that you would begin to speak to yourself? And one of the best ways, rather than doing a flip flop story, so my story or my language being, you are so stupid. So I could say my flip flop story might be like, you are so amazing. Well, probably in my system, that's too far. That's an overreach. And so I might believe that once, but that's going to be a little harder to hold as my ongoing acceptance of myself. So remembering if forgiveness is thawing and I'm frozen at stupid, what's going to begin to get me to melt a little bit more towards my center? So I actually don't remember what my first story was because I wasn't using this process quite at that moment. But for now, what I would say if I was calling myself stupid, my first beginning of melting would be to say, I'm sorry that I called you stupid, and I don't really think that. So I wouldn't necessarily go into calling myself something amazing. I would pause right there in that place of recognizing that judgment and say, I'm sorry. I don't really think you're stupid. I know you didn't do that on purpose. One of the things that did wake me up in that moment was the fact that my nephew was with me. And so I recognized in that moment, I would never call him stupid for dropping something. I would never enact that kind of judgment and violence onto another person consciously. I'm sure I did it plenty unconsciously, but I was not willing to hold myself to the same standard of love that I would hold the people that I perceive to be outside of me. And that's a big aspect of understanding where we're frozen because we want to make it about the event, the dropping of the thing, the forgetting to call, the fact that we didn't, whatever, right? But our forgiveness and unforgiveness is not about the event. It's about our deep belief about ourselves. It's about how we don't often truly believe we are worthy. And this level of belief of our unworthiness comes from our forgetting of who we are. The fact that we don't know the truth of who we are. Now, some of us may have a concept. Some of us may say, oh, yes, I know that I am God. But rarely do the fruits of our life, including our inner talk, prove that that is true, right? The proof will be in our pudding, darlings. And if our pudding of self talk is one of poop and crap, right? We can't kind of put sprinkles on that and think that it's okay because conceptually I say that I believe that I'm worthy, or conceptually I understand that I'm God. If it is not an actual inscribed cellular memory that I live from, then I am not an embodiment. I am not inhabiting that as truth. And so everyone who wants to gloss over these thawing places cannot come into embodiment, cannot be the actual enactment, inhabiting of the self as anthropos. Okay? So this is very important to understand that these judgments against myself are the evidence of my forgetting of who I am. And that my process of forgiveness is the thawing that removes what's covering. So we think about maybe the ice around that nugget of truth. And that when we forgive ourselves, when we go through the process of forgiving, it melts that ice so that we can come down into that core truth of who I really am. I am divine. I am unlimited consciousness. I am brilliant. I am my infinite light. I am my soul. I am God. Whatever particular language draws you into that understanding and belief. So our forgiveness is not just to clear the event. It's not just to make us feel better about forgetting to make that phone call. It is a process of thawing our forgetfulness to come into remembrance. And so as I meet myself in that place, you're stupid, I'm sorry. I don't really think you're stupid. And then I want to begin to get into the energetics. So I'm going to ask you if it's available for you to close down your eyes and just feel into yourself. Just say your judgment statement a few times. And notice how it feels. How do you sense it? And you can use any of your clairs here. So you might know it, you might sense it, you might see it, you might hear it. Whatever your sensory system can invite. I also like us to begin to play with translating the clairs through the physical body. So as you meet it in the subtle awareness, also invite the more physical or gross anatomy awareness. So what does it taste like? What does that statement actually taste like? What does it smell like? What texture does it have? What tonal qualities are there? Invite yourself to begin to notice as much as you can about the energy of that statement, of that judgment. You'll find if you do this on several different judgments that more than likely you have an energetic quality. That's your spider web, right? That energetic quality that's going to be there. So sometimes maybe my statement was you're stupid. Maybe sometimes it was you suck, you're not good enough, whatever it might be. But the energetics had the same quality. My ego just would label it or language it in different ways. So, what are some of the things you can notice around the energy of your statement? And you're welcome to share those in the chat as well. And the reason it's important, essential in a thawing process to get in touch with those energetics is because what we're thawing is the energy that's frozen, that's stuck in that shape of that spider's web or whatever your particular image wants to be. We're shifting that shape. So our frozen self is making a shape, right? And the energy of our field is in that shape. And that's going to then also be part of the shaping of our body. And you might notice as you play with this energy, as you step into it, it's like, oh, it's in the front of my heart, or it's in my belly, or I feel it down the back of my body, or my eyes start twitching, or I get really drunk, right? It's shaping your body. It's shaping you cellularly, even if you don't know it sort of in the muscular skeletal system. It's going to be shaping how your endocrine system works. It's going to be shaping how your cells are moving. It's going to be shaping how your metabolism is flowing. It's shaping this experience. The more frozen we are, the more judgments we're holding against ourselves, the more places we're collapsed. And I won't go into all of the aspects of freeze, but just looking at it from this forgiveness place. But the more that we are frozen, the more of our consciousness that is frozen, the less alive we are, the less actual liveness that is in present moment that's available to us. So we don't have full energy. We're not in our full life force. So many of us want to go and make change. We want to create. We want to transform. We all say, oh, I want to make a difference in the world. I want the world to be different. Well, 98% of myself is frozen. So with 2% of energy, with 2% of my life force, I can barely sustain my life. I can barely get out of bed. I can barely do all of these things. And yet I want to be of service to the world. Right? So this aspect of unthawing ourselves and bringing ourselves into more aliveness is so that we also then have more of our own life force flowing. We have more access to it. And then we can make better choices. We can show up in different ways. We have more available to us. We also remember that transformation happens only in the present moment. The present moment is all there truly is. And so when we're living out of phase, when we're living in the past, we don't have the ability to change the waves to create a different type of future. Okay. So, what I want to do is just invite a little process. Now that you've gotten in touch with that energy, you might know some things about it. So, let's maybe invite ourselves to shift it. So, just to remind you, though, we can't shift what we haven't accepted. And we're trying to shift something that we are in rejection of or we're trying to get out of. So, shifting is not getting out of, shifting is going through. And so when we want to freeze that energy, want to shift it through thawing, we have to go through the whole iceberg to get to the center. We can't go around it. We can't pretend it's not there. We can't just want to flip the channel. So another reason why many of us don't fully forgive ourselves, many of us continue to stay in the same cycle, is that we're not actually coming into acceptance. We're not being with ourselves, the part of us that is able to be present. We're not coming into that presence to accept. That's my judgment. That's what I just said to myself. Wow. I have forgotten who I am and I want to remember. Okay. Right? It's simple, it's clear, and yet most of us are so addicted to our shame cycle that it's very difficult to just come into that clarity of acceptance. But it's essential. You're never going to shift. You can only shift as much as you've accepted. Now, if you can accept 1%, then shift 1%, and that's a beautiful place to begin. You can accept 10%, accept 10%. And sometimes I like to find, I don't really do numbers in terms of like, I don't know what they mean. So they're just a metaphor for me, right? And so I just might say to myself, well, how much in acceptance of that am I right now? And I might just sort of land in the number. And then I might say thank you to that much of myself that can come into acceptance. And then I'm just going to invite myself to shift that much. And what's amazing is that just beginning that process of acceptance allows more acceptance, right? So just like shame can be a snowball that spirals, acceptance could be a snowball that spirals. And perhaps that's a more useful snowball to be making in your life. But what we're going to do, I'm going to see if I can move the desk back just a little bit without knocking the computer off so I can move my arms. So we're just going to do one of my favorite heart clearing practices. For a second here, let's see if I can move the chair just a little bit. We're gonna do a little heart clearing practice, and we're gonna start with the same gesture. And some of you have done this with me before, and so we just clear through the heart fields. I've got a little bit of bend in my elbows. You can have as much bend as you want. Palms are open, nice and available, and we're just moving through the field of the heart. And you go as far back as your range of motion is. You can go as big, you can do as small. All of that is up to you. I'm going to invite you to do this. And then if you begin to feel that your heart wants to move into some other unstructured movement throughout this song, you're welcome to do this. We'll just do this for one song. What you're going to do is keep your awareness from your head and your heart and your gut focused towards that place where you're accepting, I just called myself stupid. And I'm sorry, I don't really believe I'm stupid. Right there at that place of meeting between the judgment and acceptance. And as we breathe and we move into that space, what we're doing is we're just unthreading, we're melting. You can think about your breath. So another great thawing is to do breath of fire. We're not going to do that one today, but breath of fire, like bringing that heat to it, can be a really beautiful thing as well to think about. If you'd like to bring a little bit of vigorous breathing to this, you can do that as well. I'm just going to put on a song. And yeah, we're just going to move the energy there. I picked out a song and I can't remember what it is. I've actually never listened to this song, but it is called Ho'oponopono, so I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna go for it. Hopefully it'll be the perfect song. We probably won't do the whole thing, so I'll probably fade this song out, because a little longer than I planned. Uh, so the Ho'oponopono is a beautiful, thawing as well. So, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. That is such a wonderful prayer, to hold in our hearts and to have as part of our thawing practice. So part of that place of acceptance might be like, oh, I don't believe you're stupid. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. So those words hold, a lot of awareness and a lot of acceptance inside of them. All right, so let's see let's see what this song is. I think you should be able to hear. This is Sarah Emmett, Ho'oponopono. Oh. You're welcome to close your eyes. You're welcome to speak to yourself. You're welcome to sound. You have all of the permissions as you begin your thawing.
I knew it would end this way. Two broken hearts.
And go at the pacing that's going to create that heat or that feeling of heat that you need to really accept a thawing. Moving from that place of judgment into remembrance of who you are.
We both know it's time for us to go our own ways. Surrender to this moment. There is no one to blame. There is no right or wrong here. Only lessons in love and pain. We did what we were meant to do. I was me and you were you. Finally ready to see this contract through. I'm sorry, I forgive you. Thank you.
I love you.
I'm sorry, I forgive you. Thank you. I love you.
All right, just another minute. If you want to take it into some bigger movement to really thaw yourself out, if you need to say something to yourself,
Love the one who lies, for they are the one who's hurting deepest down inside. Truth is found in the moments when we come back to ourselves, when we ride the waves of emotions instead of getting caught in the swell.
on your next inhale, raise your hands over your head, hold the breath in.
I forgive you. Thank you.
On your exhale, bring your hands down to your heart.
I'm sorry, I forgive you. Thank you. I love you.
Invite that exhale to be longer than the inhale. Nice, long exhale. Not a relaxing exhale, just a lengthening exhale.
I know you are in pain. For the times I was hurting, I hurt others.
Imagine that you're blowing right into that place in your body where you notice the energy. Blowing that hot air right into that place. Melting it a little further. And you're welcome to say out loud or to yourself the Ho'oponopono or your own statement. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Right here. Right here. Be willing to remember who you are. Wake up right here in this moment. Let yourself fall as much as you can. And that might require feeling something you've been running from or accepting something else or knowing that you're going to have to make a change. Be courageous. Be willing right here. And if there's a commitment that you need to make to yourself, go ahead and make it. There's a promise, perhaps, such as mine was, not to call yourself names anymore, or a promise to pay more attention, a promise just to practice thawing every day. I've had a little cutout from a magazine. I cut it out in my 20s and carried it around the world with me. And it says, forgive yourself for everything. Actually, because I think it says, forgive everything, including yourself. That's actually what it says. Little clip. Forgive everything, including yourself. And so much of our judgments and separation and holding and withholding from others comes because of these frozen places in us. So the more we thaw and the more we open, the easier it will be to navigate difficult, rough, uncomfortable, hard places with others in the world. Forgiveness and thawing allows us to rest into that center of who we are, which is where grace is available. And so, on these last few breaths, just let yourself breathe in grace, whatever color or sensation that might be for you, just letting it arrive, bathing yourself, blessing yourself. Mm. Say one more thank you. And if I could give you some homework going forward, it would be to really be willing to look at these places of judgment, not from the story, though working through the story is going to be important, not from the event, though noticing what events trigger us can be important, but from this place of understanding you're frozen in the past and that unforgiveness is the pathway to unfreezing, to calling yourself home. And it is a path and a process that you can engage whenever you need, as much as you need, whenever you want. and that this is your birthright. And so living inside of that truth of who you are is something only you can choose for yourself. And no matter how many books you read and no matter how many programs you do and all of that, if you are not willing to inhabit the truth of who you are, that requires every aspect of this vessel and the field that it inhabits to be organized in this place of acceptance and grace and truth, then no concept is going to change your life. And information is not going to save you. More books and more programs aren't going to make a change in your life unless you're willing to accept your worth, your brilliance, your beauty, the truth of who you are. So thank you for practicing with me today, some forgiveness, and I hope that this has served you. And I hope that you will let me know what you take from this and how you're going to apply it. And if you're curious to know more about how embodiment and embodying your intuition and how dealing with yourself through this nervous system patterning is going to support your awakening, you can follow me here on Facebook at Elisha Halpin. Instagram as well, Elisha Halpin. And also you can go to elishahalpin.com and sign up for my newsletter and get in touch through what I am offering, what's going on, and get little love nuggets from me each week. All right, thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.